My name's Amanda, and I would like to be the first to wish you a happy Artsy Fartsy Friday. Today, we are going to be dipping our toe into the world of vinyl. This is very new territory for me, so I want to break down my process step by step and also show you guys a few tips and tricks I learned along the way. Before we get into the video, I want to give a really quick shout out to all of my amazing patrons. Thank you to the new patrons for this month. They help make this video possible. Thank you so much. If you are interested in my Patreon and more information, there is links down below, and the August rewards are still available through the end of this month. So without further ado, let's talk vinyl. I'll give you a brief story about how all of this started. Back in December, I got my Cricut machine, and I've really only scratched the surface of what this machine can do. I'm still learning about it all the time, but for the most part up until now, I've only been making kiss cut sticker sheets with my Cricut. And it's capable of doing that and a whole lot more. So this whole idea of making my own vinyl decals was really running in parallel with my hope of getting to learn more about the Cricut machine. But first, let's just break down the supplies that you will absolutely need. The first thing that you're going to need if you want to make your own vinyl decals is some vinyl. There's a lot of different types of vinyl out there, a lot of different brands that you're going to hear when you first start exploring this type of thing. That was my experience, so I just kind of wanted to break down how I navigated this market, this unknown market for the first time. First, Cricut does offer their own brand of vinyl. It's available wherever Cricut machines are sold, online, in store. I saw some at my local Michael's, but to be honest, I thought it was a little bit overpriced, and I typically had to buy a whole bunch of it. I either had to buy it in bulk, or I didn't have the flexibility to try it out before I really committed to it. While I was at Michael's, I also stumbled across Oracle, which is another very popular brand of vinyl that you will hear about in the crafting community. Typically, you'll hear about Oracle 651, but in my store, I was able to find Oracle 651 and Oracle 631. So that is what you'll be able to find in store, but I was also able to try some of the Arteza self-adhesive vinyl. They were kind enough to send me this pack of 42 sheets. Comes with 40 different colors plus a matte white and a matte black sheet, so you do get some different finishes in here. There are some wonderful metallic sheets in here, and I think just the variety for the price is really, really nice. All of the sheets are 12 by 12, which fits perfectly on the Cricut cutting mat, so it was kind of like they knew their market when they put this out. So I love the flexibility that this offers, and per their instructions on the back, you definitely do not need a Cricut or a Cricut, however you say it. I say Cricut. You definitely do not need a Cricut or another sticker making machine in order to make your own vinyl decals. They just say use your favorite craft cutter and then remove the vinyl that's not part of your design, lay it onto a piece of transfer tape, which we'll get to, and use a squeegee or an old credit card to firmly press down, and you're good to go. You have your design. So I think this just illustrates very clearly that you do not need all of the bells and whistles to make your own vinyl decals, but it definitely steps up your game to the next level. And as you guys know, I am an Arteza affiliate, so I will have links to this vinyl down below. So if you choose to buy this or buy any other Arteza products through that link, you will be supporting the channel, and I greatly appreciate that, but not sponsored by them. This is just kind of for the sake of review, as well as just kind of showing you guys how I walked through this process, and Arteza vinyl was a big part of that process. The next thing that you are probably going to need if you are going to make your own vinyl decals is some transfer tape. The Arteza packaging alluded to some transfer tape. In my experience, I found that clear contact paper actually works really well, and this is something that I learned about through my own research on YouTube. I got this on Amazon. You get a whole bunch of it for like $6 or $7. I'll link this down below as well. I'm an Amazon affiliate as well, so same deal. You'll be going to support the channel if you buy something through that link. But this was really, really handy, and I thought it was very straightforward and easy to use. I did see some people say that it's a little bit almost too sticky. So one thing you can do is remove some of that stick by just like rubbing it on your pant leg really quickly or something like that, to remove some of that really harsh stick, and that will make your design easy to transfer off. I did not have any problems that I feel like were specifically because of the transfer tape. I'll get into that later. I was not too keen on the idea of removing some of that excess stick on my pant leg or something like that. I didn't want lint or anything interfering with my vinyl design, so that was just my preference. But get you some transfer tape. I would not recommend using like Scotch tape or packing tape or something like that. Get something that is at the very least contact paper, if not specifically meant for vinyl. Again, I will link my contact paper down below because I do find that it worked really, really well. The next thing that you're going to need is some kind of cutting tool. This can be as simple as a pair of scissors, but I definitely think you will want something that offers you a little bit more control. In my experience, I used an X-Acto knife to remove excess vinyl and then trim down the vinyl decals to their individual sizes. This is just my preference. I'm very comfortable using an X-Acto knife or a hobby knife, so I didn't find it to be too much of a problem or too much of an adjustment to use. But you'll definitely want something that's going to help you trim off the excess vinyl, cut the contact paper, and then trim down the backing to its actual size. This is just the fastest way to do it. And coupled with this, I always recommend a ruler so that you get straight edges whenever possible, and something like a self-healing cutting mat just to protect the surface of your desk. I will link a similar one down below on my most used art products list on Amazon, just because I think having this in your tool belt is something that is highly necessary. I've been using this one for a very long time and it's held up really, really well. But really the X-Acto knife is just for the sake of trimming down the vinyl to size and not necessarily like cutting out those intricate designs. The fourth thing is something I alluded to already, and that is a sticker making machine like a Cricut or a Silhouette. I definitely was not able to cut these designs by hand. So if you have one, use it. Maybe your friend has one, maybe your mom has one, maybe your mom's friend has one. Try it out. I think it's a really good thing to learn how to use. The Cricut, in my experience, has been very user-friendly. The fifth thing on this materials list is also optional, but I do highly recommend it. I got a set of Cricut accessories when I got my machine, and they have been a lifesaver for vinyl decals. The two that I'm going to talk about most is the weeding tool, which looks like this. It kind of almost looks like a dentist pick or something like that, and the squeegee. These are two things that you could very easily replace with things that you probably already own. If you have a pair of old tweezers that you're not using for anything else anymore, you can probably use that instead of a weeding tool. And like Arteza mentioned, you can use an old credit card, gift card, hotel room key in place of a squeegee. I just think that the squeegee has edges that are more specifically designed not to damage the vinyl, so that is why I prefer to use this. But obviously if you don't have this, that's fine. You can probably make do just fine without it, but I have it, so I'm gonna use it. So I do recommend these things. They've been very helpful to me. The weeding tool you'll kind of see me use more throughout the video, but this is to help remove those excess pieces of vinyl that are very tiny and intricate in your design. So it's really, really helpful for that, so that you're not having to bend the backing to lift those pieces up, because you don't want to bend your backing too much before you actually apply your decal, or especially if you're selling them, you don't want to sell a piece of backing that's kind of been bent and warped. So this kind of helps that process. Now that we have all of the supplies cleared up, we are going to break down the vinyl decal making process into 6 different steps. Step 1, you're going to want to create your design. For my design, I used Procreate to create a very clean, clearly defined image, and then I exported that image as a transparent PNG, meaning there was no background, and then I imported that into the Cricut Design Space site and uploaded that to a canvas. If you're looking for a more in-depth video on Design Space, there are plenty of them here on YouTube, all of them very, very informative. I watched many videos on Design Space before I really started using my Cricut machine. Same goes for if you have a silhouette. There are plenty of informative videos out there. This video is not going to be breaking down how to use Design Space necessarily. If you are not familiar with Design Space, definitely look into some of those videos. I will link some of my favorite crafting YouTubers down below that have been really helpful in that process for me personally. If you do not have a digital art program that you can design your decal in, there's definitely nothing stopping you from drawing it by hand or even just freehanding it by just cutting directly on the vinyl. I think that that might be a little bit more tricky and might be a little bit more trial and error, but it is an option. So if you don't have all of these expensive supplies like a Cricut machine and an iPad and a drawing program, that's okay. You don't need to use those things, but if you have them, use them, because like I said, it's going to step up your vinyl decals to the next level. My biggest tip for creating your own vinyl decal design is to keep it simple. Simplicity is going to be your friend here. You don't want a design that is overly detailed and too heavy on intricate designs, because the reality is in the vinyl decal, they're likely to get lost or hinder your ability to actually remove the vinyl and transfer it to the transfer tape. So keep that in mind when you're making your design. A lot of little lines and edges might get lost. The next thing is you don't want to think too big or too small. Granted, you have a whole 12 by 12 inch piece of vinyl to work with. You don't necessarily want to fill it up too much because you might run into problems with it not cutting properly or the proportions being off. And you definitely want to avoid vinyl decals that are too small, especially when they do have those more intricate details. It's going to be very easy for those small details to just get in your way, and sometimes the Cricut machine might not even be able to cut lines that small, and so you're going to get little errors here and there as well. My next piece of advice is that if you're not sure what type of designs work well and you have a Cricut machine, what I did was I actually just went into Design Space and explored some of the designs on there that were already free to use, and I just tried cutting those out on a piece of vinyl. What this allowed me to do was play around with the sizing a little bit and then see how the Cricut actually cut the vinyl and how the vinyl behaved when I peeled it off. It didn't seem like a big learning experience, but in hindsight, it really did teach me a lot, because one of the designs that I picked had a lot of really tiny lines and dots, and none of those tiny lines and dots made it to the final decal when I finally adhered it to the surface, because they were just too difficult to peel off. And I don't necessarily know if that was just the design flaw. I think additionally it might have been an issue with the vinyl, which I'll get into at the end of the video. I am going to review all of the vinyls that I used. But I think it was just, for me, a lesson that either the design was sized too small or the design was just too detailed. So I needed to eliminate one of those factors, either make the design bigger or eliminate the details, in order for this decal to really work. So I struggled a lot with trying to get those small details to work out, and they really just didn't. So I think if I were to give you guys a piece of advice, it would be to save the headache and either scrap the details or size up. So that is definitely something that I learned through practicing, making some vinyl decals with some pre-made designs that I already knew were going to work well before I move forward with designing my own. And I would recommend a similar process to you guys, especially if you learn by doing like I do. Step number 2. This is where you'll want to get your vinyl adhered to your Cricut cutting mat. You want to make sure, obviously, that there's no air bubbles, that the corners aren't lifting. This is, again, where something like a squeegee can be really helpful, because it can help you push out any air bubbles on the vinyl itself. And obviously, you want to set yourself up for success in the very beginning. If your vinyl is not properly adhered to your cutting mat, your vinyl decal might not cut properly, and that might cause other problems. So definitely do yourself a favor and do not rush through this part, and make sure that your vinyl sheet is clearly adhered to your mat. And then once your vinyl is attached to your cutting mat, you can load it into your Cricut and you're good to go. The Cricut kind of takes it from here, and it does all of the hard work for you as long as all of the other steps were done properly. Step 3, you're going to want to remove your vinyl from your cutting mat. And when you do this, it's very important that you are peeling the mat off of the vinyl and not the vinyl off of the mat. The mat will return to its same flat formation. The vinyl sheet will stay warped. So you definitely want to try and keep the vinyl sheet very straight and flat and curve the mat so that you're not altering the vinyl. But for peeling anything off of the Cricut mat, you want to peel the mat, not the material. Then step 4, this is a fun one. You're going to peel off the excess vinyl. If your vinyl was cut properly, the excess should remove really, really easily. There are some vinyls that I used in this process that were more difficult to peel than others, and I don't necessarily know what this is contributed to. I have some suspicion, so I'll break those down like I said at the end of the video. It's definitely important to go slow, and this is definitely a time where that weeding tool can come in handy because it can help you hold down the edges of your vinyl design while you're peeling off the excess, and then again go in and pick out those little pieces that might have been left behind at the end of it all. So this process is a lot of fun. It's very satisfying to watch, but it's also the point where it's really gonna make or break your vinyl design. If this part doesn't go well, then you might have to start over. So take a deep breath, get your steady hands, and just enjoy the process because it is a lot of fun. Step number 5, you're going to apply your transfer tape, or again in my case, my contact paper. I already gave you guys the tip of removing some of that excess stickiness by putting the contact paper on something like your leg or a piece of fabric first. Like I said, I didn't do this personally, but it was a tip that I found kind of floating around into the community, so I wanted to pass that on to you. The second tip that I have is to cut the size of your contact paper just slightly larger than the backing of your decals. This just gives you a little bit of a margin of error because when you are rolling out that contact paper, you might end up going off at a little bit of an angle and you still want your whole design to be covered. So if you just make it a little bit bigger than the size of your vinyl design, you're more likely to just get it right on the first time, and then you can just trim off that excess later. When you are applying the contact paper, this is kind of just like any sort of sticky application process, like if you've applied your own phone screen protectors or anything like that. What I like to do when I apply them is start by applying one little edge first. I will kind of peel off about 1/2 inch of the contact paper and I'll stick that down first. Then I will kind of slowly stick it down and then remove the backing as I go so that it kind of applies in one easy swooping motion. And then I use my squeegee again to work out any air bubbles and really make sure that that vinyl adheres to the contact paper. That's a very important part. I will often take the squeegee and run it over the top of the vinyl decal, and then I'll flip it over and run it over the back of the vinyl decal as well, just to make sure everything's really adhered properly. The other tip that I have for you guys that is a huge time saver is to try and do as few cuts as possible. And in order to do that, what I did was I had all of my vinyl decals on one sheet. I removed all of the excess vinyl at one time, and then I just applied one big sheet of contact paper over all of the decals, and then I trimmed them down individually. This I just found was a huge time saver, so I wanted to pass that information on to you rather than cutting out all of the vinyl designs individually and then applying contact paper one by one, because then you have to figure out the size of each one and it just gets kind of annoying. So my best piece of advice that I think I learned in this process was to try and do as many of those cutting and peeling and pressing steps in large proportions so that you don't have to do as many little steps over and over and over again. So that is just my bit of advice to you. Hopefully you find it helpful. And once you've successfully applied your contact paper and removed all of the air bubbles, you're basically done. Your vinyl design is good to go. It is now ready to apply or ready to sell in your online store, which is what I'm going to do with my vinyl designs. I'm going to be launching them in my online store on September 1st. If you're more interested about that, you can look more in the description bar down below. I'm going to be launching a bunch of items on my store on September 1st that are all kind of based around a certain theme, so stay tuned for that. Now let's get into applying your vinyl decal. If you were just making these for your own personal life and you want to apply it right away, here's the tip that I have for applying the vinyl decals successfully. As I've kind of been alluding to throughout this video, there was one sheet of vinyl in particular that I had a really hard time removing. Not only removing the excess vinyl from the backing, but also removing the vinyl from the contact paper. And the tip that I found to be really helpful, surprisingly, was leaving the vinyl to just sit for like 10 to 20 minutes, coming back and then attempting to peel it off again. After every time, before I would step back and wait, I would run over it again with the squeegee, and I would really try and make sure that everything was adhered very nicely, and then I would just leave it. And then I would come back after 10 or 20 minutes and I would try again. If it was still giving me a hard time, I would squeegee it again, and then I would leave it. And I would come back and try it again. And that, to me, actually worked, surprisingly. I had a couple designs, the one that I ended up applying to my printer and the one I applied to my coffee maker, that just did not want to remove. For some reason, they were sticking to the transfer tape. They did not want to let go. But when I just let it sit there, it adhered perfectly, and it was really awesome. So that's just a bit of advice that I have for you guys. And if you feel like your vinyl is continuously lifting, try, instead of pulling the contact paper up to remove it, pull the contact paper back and try and keep the tape parallel with the surface, so that you're not kind of lifting the vinyl up, you're really kind of peeling it, and hopefully that vinyl will not be as likely to lift up and stick to the contact paper. So that was another tip that I have for you guys in that removal process and in that application process of your decal. So that's definitely something you can include. If you choose to sell these, you can include that little bit of information in the store listing, so whoever buys your vinyl can know how to apply it properly. So overall, what I learned from making my own vinyl decals is that the simpler the design, the better. I've only designed one vinyl decal for myself, but I'm really excited to try more. And I think the biggest challenge for me is going to be keeping the designs simple. For the most part, I did single sheets of vinyl, but I know you can definitely get a lot more complicated and do different layers of vinyl, different colors and different textures, and I think that's all something that I'm really excited to start exploring. If you guys have any suggestions for vinyl designs, I'm super interested to know. So let me know in the description bar down below what design you think I should cut out in vinyl next. The next thing that I learned is that you shouldn't be afraid to mess up, because you probably will, and that's okay. Like I said, if you're anything like me, you're going to learn by doing, and so the most important thing that you can do for yourself is just try it out. And if you mess up, so what? You'll figure it out. And if not, then you'll learn something new, and you'll be able to take that with you into your next experiment. And the last thing that I learned is that vinyl looks cool on just about everything. I feel like every object I own right now has its very own vinyl decal, and I'm not mad about it, because I think it looks really cool and it's a really fun way to decorate your life. It's a very fun way to like upgrade something and kind of give it a second wind and look like it's brand new. And if you are someone who tables at conventions or has an online store, vinyl decals are a super cool way to expand your product line, which is what I'm intending to do. So I'm really excited about that, and I think a lot of people are excited about vinyl decals. I know I get really excited about them when I see them at conventions. So I think this is going to be a really fun next step for me. Just to briefly break down my thoughts on all of the different brands of vinyl, I know I was kind of alluding throughout the video to one piece of vinyl that was giving me a bit of a tricky time, and unfortunately that was from the Arteza pack. But interestingly, it was only with one color. I tried a few different colors from this pack of vinyl. I tried the black and the turquoise and the yellow, and the yellow gave me such a hard time. Like I mentioned, the yellow vinyl really did not want to remove from the backing when I was removing the excess vinyl to reveal my design. And it also didn't want to remove from the contact paper when I was trying to adhere it to these various surfaces around my house. Yellow is my favorite color, so that was kind of a letdown, but I will say none of the other colors that I tried gave me that problem. So I'm not sure if the yellow vinyl was just a little bit thinner or reacted differently maybe to like the heat of my hands, because like I mentioned, when I left the yellow vinyl just sitting on the surface and then came back to it a little bit later, it removed no problem. So it's definitely still workable. I still recommend the Arteza vinyl, and I think the best part about it is that you get lots of different colors and finishes in here. So if you are new to the vinyl game, this is a really good place to start, just to figure out what you even like, and if you want to use certain colors for things. I think it's really good, and like I mentioned, it's a good value, so I think I would still recommend this to anyone who's interested in trying out vinyl. But I just wanted to be very honest and transparent about my experience, which was that I did have some difficulty with one of the sheets of vinyl in particular, and it just happened to be yellow, which is my favorite color. So sad, but also still workable. And it's been a couple of days since I've applied these decals, and I've applied them on things that I use every single day, like my water bottle, and they're looking great and they're holding up really, really well. The one on my coffee maker is holding up really nicely, and the one on my printer looks really great, even though it was a pain to get on there. It's on there now and it's not going anywhere. As for the Oracle vinyl, I have to say I really enjoyed the feel of the Oracle vinyl. Both the 651 and the 631 are a little bit thicker than the Arteza vinyl, or at least they feel thicker to me, and they remove effortlessly. The excess vinyl, I swear I could just like haphazardly schlep it off of the backing, and that excess vinyl peeled off perfectly with no issues. So I thought that was really, really nice. The only downside to me about the Oracle vinyl was that I bought the sheets in open stock, and so a lot of the sheets were kind of bent or warped. So that's always kind of a bummer, because it's nice to have the benefit of buying an open stock, but sometimes buying an open stock means buying potentially damaged, because everyone can touch them and grab them and they just don't necessarily transport well, which is another plus about the Arteza one, is that these transported to me perfectly. They were completely undamaged and they've been really nicely preserved in their packaging. So that's really important. I've since now stored my Oracle vinyl in here as well, so I feel like they will not get damaged further. But there's definitely a plus side for buying Oracle, because you can buy it online and in store, open stock and in bulk. So you don't necessarily have all of that flexibility with Arteza. You can only buy Arteza online, and you can't buy all of their colors in bulk, and you definitely can't buy individually in open stock. So I think there's still some limitations with Arteza, but I stand by my opinion that if you're just starting out, it's a really great place to start. So that is my opinion on all of the vinyl that I tried out, as well as my step-by-step process for how to create your own vinyl decals. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and let me know what type of vinyl design I should create next. And if you're interested in picking up these vinyl decals, you can check out my online store. They will be launching on September 1st. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you again to my patrons for their amazing support. I love them so much. They are amazing. And I will see you guys on the internet. All right. Bye, guys.